And I don't want to be like, hello, me! Meet the real me! Because that's played out and cheesy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third tier list we've ever done here on the Torgo Entertainment YouTube channel. This time around, kind of a stopgap tier list. We are ranking and discussing all 17 of the Megadeth studio albums. This may seem like a curveball for this channel. Mostly when we talk about music, we talk about pop music. But we have some metalheads in attendance. I am certainly one of them. You may not know that from other things that I've posted. But I am here. Kev, who you've seen in previous videos as well, is definitely here as well. You may not hear it, but he's definitely here.
Hi. Sorry.
And we have a special guest joining us if he wants to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Drew Zalucki. I was a metal DJ at WHUS. I was a metal director there. And then after that, I began my music journalism career on the side. And for 15 years, I wrote for Metal Injection. And since 2016, I have also, and now it's my main metal thing is, I am a contributor to Decibel magazine, mostly online, but also in print. But online, I have a column every Friday called 5 for Friday, where I cover new releases for the week. And I also do, several other types of features on the site. And I also am the lead singer and one of the guitarists in a black metal band called Cemetery Moon. Longtime Megadeth fan, so I'm stoked.
In fact, a little bit of disclosure here. Drew and I actually saw Megadeth live together back in 2008 at the New England Metal and Hardcore Festival in Springfield, Mass.
Yes, that was I think my second time seeing Megadeth, and yes, that was United Abominations era Megadeth. And
yes, Chris Broderick had just joined. Yeah,
and what New England Metal and Hardcore used to do back then, and they still kind of do this now that they're back, is sometimes if they would have the 2 nights, but if there was a tour coming around that they could loop in, they would hook it on to like a third night. And so that night was the night of the Gigantour tour that happened to be stopping in Worcester. It timed it perfectly. So there was a second stage with a bunch of hardcore bands, but they put Megadeth, Children of Bodom, In Flames, Job for a Cowboy, and High on Fire on for that night. So
yes, definitely remember. Definitely a great time. So with this tier list itself, we have 6 tiers, S through F. S stands for the best album, F stands for the utter garbage, and Megadeth, as if you know the band, you know that they are certainly capable of both ends of the spectrum. We will be going into that. I have randomized the order of the albums because I feel like it's a little more engaging to listen to these in a more random order than just going through them chronologically. So we will discuss them one by one. However, instead of randomizing properly, the one I wanted to get out of the way first, because I was not entirely sure whether it should count or not, and that would be Hidden Treasures, the B-sides and the soundtrack cuts compilation that they had from the mid-90s, with album tracks such as Breakpoint, Angry Again, 99 Ways to Die, a bunch of stuff that they had. They had their No More Mr. Nice Guy cover that they did as a 3-piece right before the Rust in Peace lineup truly gelled. You may not consider it to count because is it an EP? Is it not an EP? It's only got 8 songs on it proper, but there are full-length albums that are shorter than this, so I think it's worth discussing. But unfortunately, I will let you two talk about this first. Where do you think Hidden Treasures should go? And I do want to mention briefly, we are only talking about original releases of the album, so the bonus tracks that came out on some of the remasters, especially with the earlier albums, will not factor into the ranking. We'll talk about them, but in terms of the production and the track listings, the originals are what we're going to go with.
So I would normally put this at B tier because, Megadeth's work, especially from Countdown onward, it bifurcates into 2 directions. Megadeth trying to go, saying, oh, we're going back to our heavier, faster, thrashy stuff, or Dave trying to go into a more accessible direction. Because of how successful Countdown was. And this release, A, I think definitely belongs in this discussion, but B, it has some of the finest examples of both in a way. Angry Again is one of the best written songs that they've ever put together, from like the way that the melodies are structured in the chorus. Like he has a phrase, another phrase, and then one that's similar to the first phrase, but it alternates. That's like pop music songwriting 101. It's great. I love 99 Ways to Die, but man,
Everyone does.
the No More. But I have to put it. I would put it at C, just on the weakness of No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, not a great starting off point. I will fully concede to that. So you're gonna put it in C. Kev, what do you think about Hidden Treasures?
I have it a little bit lower than you. I unfortunately have it in. My problem with it is it's just not a cohesive album. No More Mr. Nice Guy is a terrible opener. Paranoid is fine, but it sounds exactly what you think Megadeth covering Paranoid would sound like. And then other than that, you have 6 songs left. I mean, Angry Again and 99 Ways to Die are great. So, I mean, those alone, like, keep it out of F for me. But it's just like, hey, here's a few songs. 2 of them are great. Die Downs is pretty good, too. The rest, do what you will. So, for me, it's D.
I unfortunately was inclined to put it in D as well. Like I said, it's middle heavy, because Angry Again and 99 Ways to Die are obviously great. Angry Again is still a live staple. They still bust it out in their playlist. 99 Ways to Die, classic. I think a lot of people like it because they look at Megadeth tabs on Ultimate Guitar and it's the first song alphabetically. That's just a pet theory that I have. But again, some of the covers are really bad. Paranoid, there's no point in listening to the Megadeth version of Paranoid because it's too similar to the Black Sabbath version. And No More Mr. Nice Guy, I mean, there's a lot of documentation about the music video for that where Dave just kind of forgot how to play guitar because he was so wasted. So you can see him just kind of, if mouthing could be done with a hand, he definitely went through that. Breakpoint is weak. Problems is just kind of, it is what it is. It's, again, the fact that I couldn't even convince myself one way or the other, should I count it? It's a hodgepodge, but as an album, it definitely doesn't work as a cohesive unit. So I do think D is going to be the location where it ends up. I do see the merits in having it a little bit higher because there are some strong tracks on there. But if they were that strong, wouldn't they have just been on an album proper? That's the one that I wasn't so sure about. And as it just happens to turn out, if we go randomly, the very first album that we're going to talk about that counts no matter how you look at it is the most recent. The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, 2022. The second of the 2 albums with Kiko Loureiro on lead guitar. The one that they actually spent 6 years. This is the longest cycle they had between albums. It was 6 years between Dystopia and this one. Dave went through a lot. He had cancer, and he beat it. You know, the pandemic obviously happened, and there's definitely some effect on the songwriting there.
Well, it's interesting because to get ready for this, I listened to the albums in order, so I just listened to this a couple days ago. And what really got to me was how strong the second half of it is, in particular. Like, the first half of it is alright, and then you get to Soldier On, great. Celebitat, great. Mission to Mars, great. We'll Be Back is just a great thrash song, probably one of their best straight-ahead thrash songs they've done recently. I think the first half is uneven. I do think that they definitely waste Ice-T a little bit.
Rangers and Delta Force special ops shooters, locked and loaded, game's over, bitches.
I think that sounds a bit of a mess. But overall, I think there's enough good songs here to put it together in B tier. It's a pretty enjoyable listening experience for me.
I'll admit, like, this album and Dystopia have both kind of just wafted over me. I didn't, like, go back. I wanted to have the purest, like, opinion I could have about it, so I didn't do a comprehensive look back.
Sure.
I just kind of was like, okay, what do I know I actually feel about these albums? And these, like, this one and Dystopia is, like, it feels like both of them feel the last effective instance of them going to, like, okay, we're just gonna do thrash, we're gonna be Megadeth the way that the metal fans want us to be Megadeth. Endgame was like the last example of them doing that exceedingly well, I thought. And these were kind of just there's a tiredness to the most recent 2 albums. So for me, they're just kind of middling. So that I would put them. I should give them more credit than because Nico's a great guitar player and all that. So maybe C for me. Definitely not D. D feels harsh for this one, but I think C. There's just a tired quality that I feel in them, even if they're energetic and fast and all of that.
I can understand that. I definitely agree with Kev that the second half is better than the first half. I actually like Psychopathy as a short little interlude. Normally, I'm not a big fan of the interlude tracks that they do. It's like, come on, extrapolate the song a little bit. But that's fine. Again, all the second half songs are good. I really like Celebutons. I don't know if that's one that Kev had mentioned in particular, but I really like that one's got like the punk energy that they go to once in a while really well. A lot of people hate Mission to Mars, and I kind of love it. it is cheesy, it's corny, but because the song is eventually about the whole facade of loving being in space, like a lot of children wanted to do, and then you get to space and then you're stranded there only to die. I feel like you need that contrast with, just how giddy Dave is. He's like, hello, ladies, and all that. And I feel like the contrast works. I do agree, Night Stalkers is a little too long for its own good, especially because it's just a very generic riff. I'll talk more about this when we get to Dystopia, but this is the album where, since they moved to D standard tuning, this is the third album where they did that, I feel like they finally learned how to write riffs in that particular tuning, whereas before they struggled, especially with Super Collider, which we'll get to. But I feel like these riffs are more fun. There are a lot of solos kind of flying throughout. That said, I feel like the guitar solos are kind of carrying most of the album. Dave's lyrics have never been great. The lyrics aren't as cringy here as they are on other albums, I feel. I think having a 6-year turnaround and having Dave go through a lot of life that he needed to had a lot of weight on this. I feel like Megadeth albums are better if they have more time in between. We'll definitely get to that with the late 2010s. I had this in B, personally. I do think of the Kiko albums, I think it's the better of the two. I do think the songs in general are good. Dogs of Chernobyl has a really nice ambience to it that they've tried in the past, and I feel like the more, not sludgy per se, but more operatic, more bombastic, not necessarily thrashier, but heavier metal. And overall, I think the track listing is really good. There isn't anything I even want to skip. Even the Bon Jovi-esque opening to Junkie, as corny as that can be too. I would have it in B personally. So with 2 Bs and a C, I think that's going to put the Sick, the Dying, and the Dead up in B.
And to be fair, I will say also, normally thrash bands are, when they stick to their actual sound, like the scooped guitar sound and all that, their punk covers are like a horrible idea. They just shouldn't do them. But in this case, the cover of Police Truck by the Dead Kennedys actually does work for Megadeth. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And now we move all the way to 1997. The last album with the classic Rust in Peace era lineup, Cryptic Writings. This is an album that I have waffled on over the years, and my opinions, they've changed drastically. But with Cryptic Writings, and again, we're talking the original, because Cryptic Writings has a lot of different arrangement changes that they made with the 2004 remaster. Use the Man goes through a lot of different things. I, overall, and this may be first of several hot takes, because I know that my opinions on this band are not the norm, I have Cryptic Writings now as a B-tier album. I think that the songs really hold up. I know, Drew's wincing a little bit. He knows that's controversial for me.
I'm agreeing with you. I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, a lot of people, and we'll talk about Risk. You're not going to like my thoughts on Risk at all. The thing about Risk is a lot of people said that they don't like them turning pop, and because, it's like metal gatekeeping and whatnot, whatever. There's an argument to be had. We'll discuss that later. A lot of the hooks on Cryptic Writings are really solid. You have the thrashier songs like the Disintegrators, Vortex, She-Wolf was a live staple for a long time. But then you have, changes that they've made. Use the Man has the same exact chord progression as a Coldplay song. God Put a Smile Upon Your Face. It's the exact same thing. Trust, of course, is a classic that they've had, and I don't think it's ever left their playlist since they dropped this album in terms of their live sets. Triple F or Fortissimo, or however you want to call it, that one's a good album closer. Like I said, I tentatively have it in B.
Yeah, I do agree. When it comes to, look, I don't mind when Megadeth does like basically a poppy like hard rock sound here and there. I became a fan of this because I like metal, but actually one of the first Megadeth songs I ever heard was Almost Honest, and that's like one of the poppiest things they've done. But it's a solid track though. If you want just like a decent like rock song, it's a good song, And same with Trust, and it's funny because with this album there is Disintegrators. It's like a solid thrash metal song just buried in there, so that's cool. No, it's just it's a solid record. Their output from the 1990s, when you look at their thrash contemporaries from the 80s, they're kind of turned towards an alt or rock like sort of style has aged much better than some of their contemporaries' efforts to do so has.
Yeah, actually, count us all in agreement. I have it in B as well. I think the thing that keeps it in B for me is, again, I think the pop songs are really good. Like Trust and Almost Honest, just to start off, is really good. I do think some of the songs towards the second half of the album are a little bit more forgettable, a little bit more
Yeah.
fillery than maybe some other albums like Countdown or whatever. But we'll get there.
Have Cool Will Travel is the one that sticks out in my mind as the most forgettable of the bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do. Yeah, She Wolf was holding a lot of weight on the second half of the album.
All right, I mean, we are in unanimous decision. For the most part, I don't think we're going to necessarily have each individual tier in order. Do we think Cryptic Writings is better than The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead? I'm inclined to say yes.
Me too.
So I'm going to put like that for right now. Next up, we move on to 1990, Rust in Peace, the fourth album. And we're just going to go ahead and put it up there. And, is anyone not going to put this in S? I feel like it's almost a meme that everyone who is a fan of this band has this in S tier. Is it my favorite album of theirs? No, we'll get there. It's my second favorite album of theirs, but the track listing is solid. There's a reason why all these songs hold up. The production of the album is phenomenal. That 1990 original, I know some people have only heard the 2004 remaster, which they use alternate vocal takes and they do some other stuff. The drums feel a little weird, but it's very clean, especially coming off albums that came before it. They spared no expense on this one and making it sound just thrashy and raw and somehow still polished without sacrificing any of the musicianship or the songcraft to get that polish. Where I feel like sometimes the polish kind of took over a little bit more. People have talked about this album to death. I cannot justifiably put this anywhere other than S.
I agree. I mean, say what you will about Dawn Patrol. It's 2 minutes. But just any album that starts with Holy Wars and To Hang R18 is going to have a hard time not being S.
I think they've had a better 1-2 album start, but that's a really solid first 2 for an album. The first 3 alone, like in Take No Prisoners as a third track is just, again, it's got that punk energy that Megadeth does so well, coming off the more bombastic first 2 tracks, whereas Take No Prisoners is just more straight ahead, sneering, and you gotta love that. Drew, I don't think you're gonna argue with this album's placement.
No, the only actually, like, Dawn Patrol, it works as a composition within the context of the whole album. You wouldn't necessarily listen to it on its own, but I think it works in that way. And no, there are songs that even like later on, like in the summer of 2004, so I wound up first listening to the 2004 remixes of this one and Peace Sells, because that was just what was at the CD store.
Yep.
It was these 2 albums that are the first ones that I bought them and I listened to them a ton. I had Cryptic Writings already also, but these are the ones that really made me a big fan. And I think it was only years later that I actually got into the title track. I went through eras with each song being one that I really loved. I think you probably remember me mentioning to you how much I loved Poison Was the Cure.
Yes, yes I do.
And yeah, big fan of that one. And the only thing about this album that's you only really notice it on Tornado of Souls is Dave is at his most nasal on this album.
Yeah.
And on Tornado it's a little but the song is such a banger that it's fine. The only thing legacy wise that's a bit of a stain on this one is when they did that Rust in Peace live version of the album.
Yes.
You know for a fact Dave those are not his live vocals. He did what they did for the big festival show in Bulgaria with the Big Four. Everyone remembers what the original live stream sounded like. He was using his falsetto without projecting, and he sounded like Mickey Mouse. Before they started tuning down to D, there was a period of time where he was doing what Axl does now, full falsetto and no projection, and it just so he could easily hit the notes. But it's if you watch the recordings of the Rust in Peace live album, if you see him live, the track doesn't quite match the movement of his face. And it's oh man, right. You did us dirty there.
But to Megadeth's credits, they are not the only band to have overdubbed vocals on live stuff.
Yes, but in this case, it was
Yeah.
just so brazen, and like it's like it wasn't like putting a backing track on to like layer the vocals. No, it was like a complete strip out and replacement. You listen to the other, you watch the other big four, the big four, like for that same DVD. They didn't do any of that. They may have cut some things here and there a little bit, but no, what you hear is what they sang live mostly. So yeah.
I completely agree with S. I mean, Tornado of Souls is one of my favorite Megadeth songs. Obviously, the first two are, like, has way too many favorites for me to ever think of putting it
Yeah,
on.
I mean, I know people say banger is like an overrated term, but literally every single song on this track list is a banger. Every single one. On lesser bands, any of these songs would be the best song on that album. So now we move on to 2007, the era that Drew had mentioned, where I saw Megadeth for my first and only time, his second time. United Abominations, the only album with Glenn Drover. His brother Sean was on drums for the first time on this album, even though he was in the band for a couple years. Lomenzo was on bass at this point. This was his first album on bass. I used to love this album. I have a lot of fondness because in 2007, the summer between my sophomore and junior year at college, my computer hard drive completely got wiped, so I lost all my music, so I had to start one by one, and United Abominations was the first album I actually ripped on my current music library, which is 18 years strong and growing. So I always have a little bit of fondness to that. I listened to this album ridiculously often, especially my junior year in college. So it kind of pains me to give United Abominations a C at this point. Sleepwalker Washington is next, is the best 1-2 opener, like the left and right double punch I think they've ever had on an album. Those two are a fantastic opening. Never Walk Alone to Call the Arms has probably the worst example of auto-tune Dave has ever had on that line. There is one who lies in wait. If you watch the video, it's waits to kill my time. There is one who lies in wait. It's very apparent. Katy Perry should stand in awe of the auto-tune and the melodyne that Dave is applying. But after those first three, I feel like it really takes a backseat. They have a lot of, like, Gears of War is fine for what it is. You can definitely tell it was meant for, like, the opening cutscene or the opening screen to a video game. And speaking of video games, they have Play for Blood, which is probably one of the dumbest songs they've ever made. Old man relates to the kids. There's the Atout Le Monde cover, which I'm not going to blame Megadeth for that. The record label definitely wanted them to put that on the album proper and make it the first single, even though it was a baffling choice. It does end very strongly with Burnt Ice. I love Burnt Ice. That's a top 10 Megadeth track for me. But I have it in C. I just think that the track listing is very uneven, and it falls off early, even though it does get picked up at the end.
Yeah, I mean, this one has a lot of sentimental value for me also. Like, summer 2007 was like kind of a big time for me. Between years of college, I was living in New York. I was interning at Blackheart Records, and I had this album playing a lot. I bought it, I think, the week it came out, and you and I talked about it a ton once junior year started. And Sleepwalker is one of my top tier Megadeth songs of all time. I love that song. Washington is Next is great. I actually Gears of War is just a fun, like, heavy song. Yeah. And actually, the Tout Le Monde is funny because they're covering themselves because they already, like, put it out on Youthanasia. But I actually kind of like this version, the one that has I think it's the singer from Lacuna Coil. I like that version. So, but the rest of the songs, like, do have kind of a filler part to it. And the other thing too is there's a tease to a lot of them. They never get as heavy and fast as Sleepwalker does. They have moments where you feel like, oh, they're gonna play something really fast, and it's like, no, they kind of stay in this sort of countdown to extinction kind of soup the whole time. I would say it absolutely should not be any lower than C. Perhaps for sentimental value, I'm tempted to put it at B, but I could see the argument for C as well.
I'm on the edge of B and C too. I think what makes me want to put it down is, of course, we talked about Megadeth lyrics being uneven. Some of the lyrics on this album are just so bad that they distract me from the song. United Abominations, that's not really what the UN does, Dave. So kind of hard for me to enjoy that song.
Don't forget, You're Dead. One day I'll dance on your grave, even if you're buried at sea. That's called swimming, Dave.
I mean, I think the first two songs are fantastic. I almost feel bad putting it in the C with the first two that strong again. But also with Tout Le Monde, like right in the middle of the album, right when it's starting to get fillery, we get Megadeth covering themselves, but Dave singing much worse, which just kind of makes me. It takes me out of things a little bit. So I'm on the line, but I'm more on the high C, I think.
I think, yeah, C is exactly where it's going to go. We also can't forget to mention America Stan, and that's a song that'll get your ass canceled in 2025 if they try to pull that. And in 2007, it's just baffling. So, yeah, United Abominations goes in C. I wonder if people watching this are going to be mad because we have some stuff actually in the lower tiers, but they'll live. We go back to the start. Killing is my business, and business is good. Now, what I'm doing is I'm holding up the albums in front of the camera, which you can't see, but they'll be able to see. And this is one where I don't actually have the original version. I have the Final Kill, the most recent re-release that they have. But again, don't be misled. We're going to be talking about the original release of Killing is My Business, and Business is Good. The debut album. Chris Poland, Gar Samuelson. Ellefson's there too.
The thing about this one is, yes, the mastering quality is not great. Yes, some of the later albums kind of perfected what they were doing here a little more, but it's the original. It establishes the Megadeth sound. Like, the first 4 songs in particular are just classic Megadeth, like thrash songs. I do think it starts to fade out a little bit towards the end of the album, and it starts to wear on you because the sound is so monotonous a little bit. But I can't in good conscience put this any lower than B. It's the original. It establishes the sound and does a good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a death metal and black metal guy now for the most part, and like, if someone's like, Drew, let's put on a Megadeth album. What album are we gonna put on? I'm putting this one on, like 100%. This is my go-to Megadeth album nowadays because it has like the fact that it's a little frantic, unhinged, and it's the beginning of the Megadeth sound, but it's not totally formed yet. That's what makes it kind of cool. That's what gives it its charm, honestly. And the title track is still one of my favorite Megadeth songs ever. Like, just the crawling riffs that he uses on that one is just so cool. And obviously Rattlehead, silly lyrics, but it's for like early thrash, it's like, who cares about the lyrics anyway? And it's miles ahead of anything that, like, you look at the lyrics on Bonded by Blood by Exodus, and it makes this look like Shakespeare, so it's fine. And I actually love the mechanics. Sorry, everybody. I actually like that he just plays it way faster. I think that's cool. I put this at a solid A. That's where that's my argument.
Okay.
I guess the Nancy Sinatra cover is a little silly, but yeah, I don't care. A tier.
I'm going to be the contrarian. I have this album in D. And the reason why, I know. Honestly, the production is the main thing that this album has going against it. It is, in its original essence, a chore to listen to, especially knowing what came afterwards. I know it's very hard, and you want to try and look at every album in a bubble and just try to enjoy it for what it is. But if I want to throw a Megadeth album on, like if I just throw something on my phone, because I have all the CDs ripped on my phone, if I just want to throw it in my car and go somewhere, I very rarely go to this one. Now, granted, the Final Kill version is very good. They did a lot of cleanups on this album. And the 2002 remix did a lot of cleanups on this album. They've had 2 separate cleanups of this album.
I like the first cleanup a little more.
I completely understand that, but I do enjoy the bonus live tracks of the most recent one. So that's fair. But, I mean, let's be real. Their cover of These Boots is hot garbage. But I think it's intentionally hot garbage. It's just kind of... I feel like you had said they still had not nailed down the sound of what they wanted. Dave was just like, I'm going to play as fast as possible. And with that MO, it's perfectly fine. But the song craftsmanship is just not there. I know that it's not the point. I know it's just supposed to be raw and energetic, and they're young. So I respect it a lot. If it was like, legacy-based and how much of an impact it had on the genre, I would definitely put it higher. But personally, I would have it as a D tier for me. However, even incorporating my D, it averages out to a B for all of us. So B tier is where it's going to go. I don't know where we want to put it among these two. I said I have a lot of thoughts about Megadeth that are not popular, and I'm not a huge fan of the first album. I mean, obviously I like all of them to some extent. Even the ones that we're going to put in F, I'll be like, well, I own it, so I must like it somewhat. But, yeah. Now we move on to Youthanasia, 1994. I hope you like stuff in E-flat at 120 beats per minute, because we got a lot of it on this album. We've got Reckoning Day, Train of Consequences, Addicted to Chaos, the original A Tout Le Monde. Ends with Victory, got a bunch of stuff in there. I guess I'll start this one. I've always been kind of torn on this album. It is very samey. There are fleeting moments of brilliance on this album. I love Reckoning Day. Seeing the live performances where Ellefson is just banging away on a floor tom. You don't really see that in metal in particular, where bandmates are playing other instruments outside of what they normally do. And it shows that Dave and crew were willing to experiment with how things are written for them. But there are a lot of songs where I feel like, I'm going to be real with this. Some of the songs I listened to this album again 2 weeks ago, and I still don't remember how Black Curtains goes. I still don't remember much about I Thought I Knew It All. Blood of Heroes is fine. Family Tree is fine. Killing Road is good. I've warmed up to Elysian Fields. I used to hate that song. So personally, I have Youthanasia as a C. It would be higher, but I do feel like it's very samey. And in terms of albums, listening front to back, by the time it's over, at least it has Victory there to shake it up a little bit, because otherwise it does start to wear thin a little bit for me.
This one's kind of a shrug for me, just in general. Other than Reckoning Day, and maybe a couple moments here and there. Otherwise, it's like an Airsats version of Countdown for me. It's like Dave's trying to keep that momentum going. He wants to go platinum again. I think he did with this one.
Like, to me, like, Dave, like, lost the plot a little bit. It's like Countdown, but, like, Countdown still had, like, Ashes in Your Mouth. Well, we'll get to it. Like, it had thrashier stuff on it. This is just, everything is the same. I mean, they try to build within the template, but the tempo gets to you after a while. I love Reckoning Day. I love Addicted to Chaos. Love Train of Consequences, but by the end, it's just there. It's a C.
Yeah, it's gonna go C. Have you heard the live version from Rude Awakening of Train of Consequences, where Dave very clearly forgets the lyrics to the song? Oh my god, take a listen to Rude Awakening again. Also, it's even worse because they performed Train of Consequences on Letterman. If you watch Letterman's tape of Megadeth performing Train of Consequences, it's bad. And this is the only album in their discography, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only one that's in E-flat. They dropped it a half step for this album. Peace Cells isn't like a weird quarter step down, but this one is an E-flat through and through. I'm not sure why they did that. They didn't really need to. I think it was more because a lot of their contemporaries in the industry were having E-flat albums. A lot of stuff was half-step tuned in the 90s, so I feel like they down-tuned it a little bit, specifically to have a more palatable sound on the radio.
Potentially. I mean, so half-step down, Slayer's tuning has always been half-step down, except for Show No Mercy, but other than that, they've always been half-step down. Maybe even on Show No Mercy as well. And then Alice in Chains has always been half step down. So this is the grunge and alt rock era. So there may have been someone at the label that was like, "Hey, try tuning down a little bit if you're gonna try and go for this sort of like sort of kind of gritty like rock sound or whatever." Yeah, I don't even like Train of Consequences in general. The verse melody, like it strikes. There's an awkwardness to it. This is like. Ugh.
Next up, we go to So Far, So Good, So What, 1988. Another unique band lineup. We got Jeff Young on lead guitar, and we have Chuck Who Cares on drums. 8 tracks here. It's a short album. This is the other album that suffers a lot from its production. I don't think it's quite as egregious as it was on Killing Is My Business. They had the money there. They were just coked out of their mind when they made this album. They were definitely on a lot of illicit substances. When I was working at a Boy Scout camp, which I did for many, many summers in 2007, Don Veneman let me borrow a couple of his Megadeth CDs. One of them we haven't gotten to yet, and the other one was this one. So I listened to this album a lot when I first really started getting into the band. But I'll let one of you two start. What do you think about So Far, So Good, So What?
I mean, it's an S-tier album title. But in terms of the actual songs on it, I like this album a good deal, but I think you can tell the release year 1988 a lot. They're kind of following the contemporaries and trying to make more complex arrangements. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think In My Darkest Hour is a very strong song. I love the opening duo of Into the Lungs of Hell and Set the World Afire. The production does hold some of the complexity back a bit, but for me, I still enjoy this as an A. There's nothing I can really point to as bad here. Good, consistent listen, not absolute top, but there's enough good stuff here for an A.
Yeah, I tend to like raw production, and in general, this is part of why Killing is like high as it is for me, even with the original version. But on this one, yeah, there is a bit of a mismatch with what they were trying to do with like the raw production. And no, Set the World Afire is great. In My Darkest Hour is a classic for a good reason. And Hook and Mouth is a cool song too.
Love Hook and Mouth.
And censorship and freedom of speech. It's actually, when you watch the Sophia recording from the Big Four one, if you were able to watch the original version, Dave actually performs that one quite well. Without any, just in the original recording. Yeah, a lot of great stuff in this album, but again, this one's one that has like the big black mark on this is like their cover of Anarchy in the UK. No,
so bad.
Like 1980s thrash bands with the Marshall stack scooped mid guitar sound have no business covering 77 era first wave punk. You just don't do it. It's not going to sound good unless you want to change your guitar setup and go for a warmer sound. But it's also kind of silly. It's a little odd for an American band to cover like a song that's so self-evidently UK based. It just sounds strange. It's like Anthrax when they covered God Save the Queen. It's like, what stake do you have in this? And it doesn't work. It sounds like hackneyed and strange and dumb. So but I think though it belongs no lower than C, because Set the World Afire and My Darkest Hour and Hook and Mouth are so good. So
I had this in C as well. Hook and Mouth is my highlight of the album, although Set the World Afire is still very good. I wish they performed that song more. Mary Jane is kind of weak. It has the same problem that a lot of album tracks do in this era, where it's the same chord progression throughout all the songs. It's E minor, and then it's C major, and then it drops down to an A. Trust does it too, but it's probably the best example of that. But there are a lot of songs in the late 80s and the 90s of them. They just kind of wrote the same riff over and over again, and they just kind of thought we wouldn't notice. 502 is dumb fun. It is dumb, but it is fun, so I kind of love it. Recently, I saw with their new lead guitarist, Timu, who likes introducing new songs into their set list, they brought back Liar into their live playlist now, which I thought was very surprising, because Liar is kind of dumb, because it's about Chris Poland stealing gear and all that, and Dave being all, I'm a born-again Christian, so I forgive everybody. Except if you actually pay attention to anything I'm saying, in which case I actually don't. But I'm going to say that I do. But Liar always kind of is weirdly buried near the end of the album. I have this in C overall, as I said. The strong stuff is really strong. Into the Lungs of Hell is a fun opener. It's a little repetitive. But again, Anarchy in the UK is a huge black mark. It's the brown spot on the banana, is how I like to put it. Again, I've never loved In My Darkest Hour. I get the symbolism of it, but it doesn't need to be as long as it is. So I think C is where I would put it, but with Kev's A propping it up, So Far So Good So What is going to end up in B tier.
Everything's in B.
Everything's going in B. I don't think...
It's the bell curve distribution, I guess. So, yeah.
I don't think this next album is going to go in B, as a little bit of a spoiler warning. Next we have 13. This album I bought blind when it came out in 2011. I bought this album right before I actually went to Connecticut to hang out with Drew and a couple other friends for my birthday that year, and I hadn't heard anything on the album. Did you like Hidden Treasures? How it was a bunch of collections of B-sides and off-tracks? Because that's kind of what 13 is. It opens up with Sudden Death, which was written for one of the Guitar Hero games, and you can definitely tell it was written for a Guitar Hero game because it doesn't really work as a song so much as a challenge. And then you get immediately to Public Enemy #1, where Dave busted out a rhyming dictionary and beats it into the ground. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this album. I'll preface it and let you all talk, but I'll say I have this in D. I'm not a huge fan of 13.
I would put it in C, just on the strength. I really like Sudden Death. And as far as a poppy Megadeth song goes, I like Public Enemy #1. I remember when they played it on Conan for like a Halloween special, and Dave was dressed up as Frankenstein.
It was Kimmel. It was Kimmel that they did that for.
Oh, Kimmel, excuse me. And they did a really good job. No, I remember liking this one, and actually even Whose Life Is It Anyway, I remember liking. It was not bad. And then there's a couple other songs. It's funny, Black Swan is one of the ones where you can tell it's from the United Abominations sessions.
Oh, definitely.
Because some of some of these are from Endgame era, some are from United era. The ones where his vocals are way stronger and way younger sounding, they're from United. Because somewhere around 2008 and 9 is when Dave, he got a little older and his range probably changed a little bit. And instead of tuning down, he started hitting his falsetto way too much. And the gravel in the voice started to happen. And we could talk about Dave's voice in detail later, but and what he should be doing now with it. The gravel starts to creep in, like on Endgame in this one, when he's using the lower register, and he stops going high because he can't do it anymore without hitting the cringy falsetto, because he won't project through it, because to project through it, you would actually just be kind of fry screaming, which is fine, but I guess for Megadeth it doesn't suit him. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to Endgame. Yeah, this one I don't dislike it enough to put it in D, though, but I'm not going to argue up and down if you put it in D. So
yeah, you could say that Dave's voice went through a recession in 2008. But I have this album in D. I actually went to listen to it the other day. There were a couple of these albums I hadn't listened to in a long time, and this was one. It was better than I remembered in some ways. I mean, I actually like the title track quite a bit. I do like Sudden Death quite a bit. Never Dead has some creative parts to it, but it's basically an album of Megadeth filler songs, and we've already talked about the Megadeth filler song, and there's just not enough good songs to prop it up. So for me, that makes it more like a high.
You mean you don't like Fastlane, Kev?
No.
Like a freight train? Like a jet plane? Or Wrecker?
Oh, Wrecker is the worst song on this for me.
I'll also say, I think 13 is fine as a song. It's a terrible album closer. The main problem I have with this album is that the lyrics are trash. Johnny K, the producer of this, does a lot of songwriting on a lot of the songs, and you can look into it. The reason why they went with Johnny K in particular is because Andy Sneap wasn't available. So they went with this guy. I think a lot of the bad lyrics are his fault. Most of the songs that I consider bad are ones that Johnny K co-wrote. A lot of the ones that we happen to like, a lot of the older songs, are either Dave solo or from a previous era. New World Order, that's from Rust in Peace era. Like Countdown Time, that's when New World Order was originally written, and you can tell. You can kind of call that a cover song because Megadeth actually gave it to another band whose name I don't remember, unfortunately, and then they took it back for them to record as a B-side, and now they're doing it again here. But yeah, the lyrics really drag it down. This was the album where before you could kind of excuse some bad lyrics, but they're just coming out your ears on this one. So I have this in D with 2 Ds and a C. 13 is going in D. I do enjoy it more than Hidden Treasures just because it's a more cohesive work, kind of. Plus, there's more of it. Plus, I really hate how they put the 1 and the 3 in there. Dave kind of went all Jim Carrey, like, did you know that the number 13, if you actually look for it, is actually everywhere? He's like, he saw that movie.
I met you when I was
23.
And the day we met was
September 14th.
9/14. 14 plus 9.
I went looking for reviews of this, and I found my review on Metal Injection of this album because it's starting to hit the era where, Drew's writing on Metal Injection. So I gave it a 7 out of 10 at the time. And I remember, so the tracks I liked at the time were Sudden Death, Public Enemy No. 1, Whose Life Is It Anyway, Never Dead, and Black Swan. And I actually didn't like the lyrics on New World Order because it was something, because I think because he was mouthing off about the Illuminati and like one world currency and stuff like that. And
We the People is pretty bad for that reason.
Was it Fastlane? And I put in there, like, you'd think Dave would have learned from Moto Psycho. Ugh. So, yeah.
This is the album where you could definitely tell Dave has turned to Fox News fairly often. He's always been contrarian with whatever government is currently in the regime, but this is the one where you can tell he's definitely he's pretty anti-Obama.
Which is, it's kind of funny with him because he's actually a bit of a moving target with all this. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but I remember looking on their website back in the day, their old website, like in the early 2000s when I first started getting into them, and they would have it was like an old school band website. They'd have a page for each band member and talk about favorite things, favorite food, blah 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 blah, favorite politicians. Dave used to have Bill Clinton as one of his favorite politicians, and I remember looking years later, and they still had the section up there, and that had been struck from there. So he's a bit of he could be a bit of a moving target. He's generally speaking, sort of bog standard libertarian. His MO tends to be throwing bombs and then acting all hurt when he's actually called out and stuff, rather than just standing his ground for most of the time.
He can dish it out, but he cannot take it.
and it's fascinating too. We can talk about this too. We can talk about the Metallica angle as well. It's funny. I feel like it's slowed down a little bit, but he would always bemoan. He likes to talk about, oh, why do people bring up the drama between me and Metallica and all that? It's like, in most interviews, he is the one that brings it up.
Yes.
And what's funny is there's all this footage of him in interviews doing that over the years. But if you look at a colleague of mine at work, I used to write for metal magazines in the 80s, and I have a screenshot of an article of an interview from, I think it's Metal, not Metal Edge, it's one of the other ones in the 80s. And there's a whole page article about Megadeth, and there's an interview, and it's from 1986. And he's pissing and moaning about Metallica there. And it's like, and then there's the famous issue of the 1993 issue of Kerrang, where they cover Norwegian black metal for the first time. And in the corner, there's a little thing of on the front page of that Kerrang issue where Megadeth says, Metallica would be so much better if I was still in the band. And he does, it's his way, it's his brand. It's his way of reproducing himself in a way, is to create drama around himself. And that keeps Megadeth being talked about, keeps him being talked about. And so his politics are definitely, for what they actually are, who knows, his politics are definitely part and parcel of that.
We resume with, I can see Drew's face getting ready because we're about to talk about Risk. I have spoken a lot about Risk over the years, Drew and I know. I kind of love this album more than I probably should, for lack of a better term. It's their most controversial album. Some people call it their sellout album. Dave was chasing after some definite radio play because Cryptic Writings was successful. And he's like, hey, more of that, please. What's his name? Bud Prager definitely had more of a thumbprint on this album. There are some really good songs on here. Insomnia is, I think, a really good opener. Prince of Darkness is very moody, and they used it to open their live shows for quite some time. I will say the kerning on this card is not great. I use a Megadeth font, and you could tell that some of the letters were definitely not meant to be used for this font because that R is taking up way too much space. But anyway.
I have a feeling I'm going to be in the middle on this, so maybe I'll start. I am on the BC line with this. I think leaning more towards C. There's some... I really admire the attempt to do some different things. I think there are some great songs on this album. I think Breadline is fantastic. I think Prince of Darkness is great. I do enjoy the time the beginning, time the end, to end the album. I think that's a good experiment that's done pretty well overall. I do think the sequencing of this album is pretty problematic. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't serve the songs at all. And then we have the experiments that just go on a long time and don't do much for me. Like, I'll Be There is okay, but it's like at least 2 minutes too long. Wanderlust just kind of sounds like Bon Jovi, and it's again very long. Just a very uneven listening experience, and to me, C is where uneven listening experience go.
All right, Drew. What do you think about Risk?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like as filled with vitriol about this one as a certain other one on this list, but it is a bit of chasing after Cryptic Writings, a little bit, and just veering too far into be basically like Megadeth playing as Alice in Chains or something like that, you know, in that way. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm a giant Alice in Chains fan, but I like them for them, you know. And I actually don't like Breadline. And I think something about there's a certain it's a little too on the nose in a way. Yeah, it's more of a shrug out. I put it at D, so I don't. It's not F, but I would put it at D. So.
All right. I have Risk in A personally. That's a me. Don't roll your eyes. I know. I love this album. I always have. There are some songs that are really. I think Ecstasy is really good for what it is. I mean, it's straightforward, you know, alternative rock. But Megadeth. This album shows that Dave has the songwriting chops, where the lyricism is actually not too bad on it. Again, Kev brings up a good point. The sequencing is kind of garbage on this. Enter the Arena might be the worst individual track that this band has ever done because of how pointless it is. There's no reason for Crush 'Em to have... How long is this on this thing? It's a 52-second intro track that's its own track. If it had long songs before, why not just append it to the beginning of Crush 'Em? And Crush 'Em is silly, but they wanted to write
it was made for the WWF at the time, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, and the music video definitely has Goldberg in it, kind of, you know, cosplaying around. like a lot of Megadeth fans are wont to do. They just throw on some body armor and say, "Look at me, I'm important."
This came out on August 30th, 1999. And it's funny that it's just after they had played at Woodstock 99. And it's funny when you watch the recording of them play, they kill it, but Dave is there. He's in a white, I think it's a white turtleneck and and like baggy,
it's like a sleeveless turtleneck, right?
Tan colored like cargo pants. And it's so funny watching him play like songs like Peace Sells But Who's Buying, and he's there like not in bullet belts and like black leather and stuff. No, he's in like he looks like he's in a Gap commercial.
He looks like he just took a lecture to the S Club 7 concert.
Yes.
But I will concede. I know that the reason I have this in A is pure personal. Like I said, I've just always appreciated this album for what it was. I know I don't like when people say it's not a Megadeth album. Did Megadeth put it out? It's a Megadeth album. It may be different than what you're used to, but that's flat out what it is. So I think a lot of people give this a bad rap just because it's different. Now, granted, even with my A, this makes it so it's only going to be in C, including Kev C and Drew's D, which I think is probably higher than some people were anticipating this to be anyway. I know a lot of people put this in F no matter what. But I do think that if you stretch your horizons a little bit, there is a lot to like about this album. I will also say the remaster of this is terrible. It's very compressed. So you do need to listen to the original. It does help out a lot. It also keeps the intro of Insomnia, whereas the remaster just kind of starts Insomnia right out the gate, and it takes away a lot of the mood setting that it does on that one. Also, The Doctor Is Calling is okay, but it's way too long. Next up we have The World Needs a Hero, 2001. The only album they did with, well, the only studio album they did with Al Pitrelli, who you may know more from Trans-Siberian Orchestra. This is the last album with Jimmy DeGrasso on drums. By the way, the version that I have, they did a 2019 remaster of it. I cannot have the original version because the original version, spoiler alert, is mixed way too loud. I think this is their worst album. I really do. I do not like The World Needs a Hero. They tried to frame this as going back to basics and trying to discard all of what they had that people did not like from Risk. But they didn't. There's a lot of pop melody on here. Disconnect has a very poppy melody, but it's not as good as most of the stuff on Risk. The World Needs a Hero was just kind of drum heavy. It's just kind of meandering. Motorcycle is stupid. The video is amusing because it's nothing but girls, because I guess the rumor is that Marty Freeman did not want girls just kind of dancing about in Megadeth videos. So Marty leaves, and Motorcycle, I'm pretty sure, was the first video from this album, and they have it filled with dancing girls. 1,000 Times Goodbye is way too long for its own good. You know what? You suck. Thanks, I appreciate that, Dave. When it might be the worst song they've ever done. It's literally Am I Evil by Diamond Head, except 9 minutes and way too long, and I'm surprised they didn't get sued for it, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, I have this as an F, personally. I find very little to like about this. The only song that really holds up, for me, is Dread and the Fugitive Mind. That's a great song.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Like, Dread and the Fugitive Mind might as well be from, it comes from a different universe than the rest of this album.
It did. It was originally recorded for Capital Punishment, their 2000 Greatest Hits collection. Dread and the Fugitive Mind and Kill the King were the two originals on that one, so it did come from a different universe.
Yeah, so fair enough there. I would definitely put this like at a D or an F. I don't think it's the absolute worst album.
I know what you're thinking. We'll get there. We'll get there. But
I can't wait. But we'll do what you will with this one.
Yeah, this is not my least favorite album either. But it's down there enough that I put it in F tier. I've always had a soft spot for 1,000 Times Goodbye, but again, I mean, despite it being too long, but I do think that a lot of this album is just like second-rate thrash. It's very funny that we're talking about this right after Risk, because I feel like this is extremely reactionary. It's like, well, people hated Risk, so we're just gonna create the most opposite album possible. But like, they forgot to write good songs, and so
it doesn't deliver. And like the album cover makes you think, oh, this is gonna be the most brutal Megadeth thing I've ever heard. And it's like it's like the band Ghost. Like everyone knows the joke about them. It's like they look like they're gonna sound like Mayhem, but they wind up sounding like the Scooby Doo theme. It's like it's almost like that.
Yeah, and also when is just possibly the worst Megadeth song. I don't know. It's the longest Megadeth song by like 2.5 minutes. I don't know why. It does not deserve.
The outro is like 3 minutes on its own.
Yeah.
But again, the production's really bad. I don't know what guitar tone they use, but it's terrible. It sounds like buzzsaws. It sounds like a bee constantly going in your ear the entire time. Also, Return to Hangar, if that doesn't just lay the plot bare right there. Like, remember Hangar 18? We want you to remember Hangar 18! With this song that's actually very simple and doesn't sound remotely like Hangar 18. It's one of their easiest songs you could possibly play. So I think that I'm happy that Dave was able to recover from his Saturday Night Palsy, which he had in 2002 right after Rude Awakening. Because for a while people were worried that this was going to be the last Megadeth studio album, and this would have been a very sour note to end on. So I think a lot of the reviews at the time, as Drew had mentioned, a lot of people, it was reactionary, and I think a lot of people were like, yeah, this is a return! I'm like, I think people were just very upset with Risk, and they were like, we'll take anything at this point. And it's just not it. Burning Bridges is bad, Promises is bad, Recipe for Hate, Warhorse is the worst song with the ellipsis in the title. Like, why? I've got a recipe for hate. Taste it! What is your recipe for hate, Dave? Is it Jamba Juice? What are you doing? Yeah, this is F. I think it's
funny. It's funny too because they styled the ellipses incorrectly too. They put a space after but not before. You're supposed to do both. But anyway, at least in AP style. But between Risk and this album is like the lowest point for metal, just in general. And because a lot of these '80s bands, other than had become basically like a coffee table book style, like just middling kind of rock-ish kind of sounding bands, and other than Slayer or they were just not around anymore, and so death metal at the time was going through a bit of a resurgence because you had like sort of a second wave of the bands like newer Morbid Angel, Nile, Hate Eternal, but it was very buried. It wasn't like it was in the early 90s when it was like becoming this big thing. And so the rock, the basic like audience when they thought of guitar oriented music, it was new metal or very just droll post grunge at the time, because this is like, this is May 2001, so this is like Nickelback is about to get huge. This is like a few months before How You Will Remind Me and all that stuff. This is like a dark time in a lot of ways, and a lot of like monochrome sort of like music videos, like the one from the way Motorcycle looks. A lot of videos looked like that at the time. It's very of its time, and when it comes to like contemporary rock and metal music, in that it just kind of sucks. So
this album was so bad it caused 9/11.
Move on.
I mean, that's a conspiracy theory level that Dave would probably attest to, just from the opposite direction. No, I hate this album. I think it's trash. It's Megadeth forgetting how to be Megadeth. I know, yes, it's a Megadeth album because it has their name on it, but the songs that are on there sounds like stuff that they should know how to do naturally, and they just could not do it anymore. It sounds like they lost the plot. Next up, we have Dystopia 2016. Kiko joined the band, Kiko Loureiro. Ellefson's still there for now. Chris Adler is doing the drums on this one. As studio only. Eventually, Dirk Verburen joined a little bit afterwards. I used to be a lot higher on this album than I am now.
I want to like this album more than I do. I mean, it's a nice attempt to return to the thrash sound, but for me, it just doesn't do it very well. The lyrics are very Fox Doozy on this album, which doesn't help anything. I think there are some tolerable songs, especially towards the beginning. But I think towards the end, especially, just Lying in State, The Emperor, those are all weaker songs. My favorite is probably Poisonous Shadows. I appreciate the ambition of what that's trying to do. I just think there's a lot of nothing here, and the second half just fades out. It's a D for me. Just like 13, it ends up the same spot.
Yeah, I mean, at this one, like, I guess I would put it at least at C. it's like there's a lot of good stuff on this one, but it's kind of the Endgame formula, but there is a tiredness to it a little bit. It feels kind of propped up. It's like, all right, just put it together, turn the gain up, and it'll solve for the fact that we're kind of just churning out this like Endgame again and again and again. And Dave's voice on this one, it sounds fine, but there's this gravelly, like, tired. It feels like there's a lot of production propping him up. You begin to hear it on this one especially, and a lot of layering of the vocals to kind of like boost him a little bit.
I wish I remembered the gentleman's name, but he has this background singer who appears on every album starting with System. I don't remember his name. I know he's a Christian artist, but he does a lot of the background vocals for Dave, and you can tell, especially with those higher counter melodies in the back, it's from that guy.
But it's not just that; it's also the layering of Dave's own vocals. That it's kind of like it's kind of what like the later like Ozzy Osbourne recordings were. It's like just throw a lot of him in there to kind of like make the fact that he doesn't quite push the way that he used to. It has this Wizard of Oz feeling to it a little bit at that point. It's not bad. It's fine. You can put on Dystopia and the most recent one, and it's like, okay, I'll hang out and like we can have a few drinks and like be like, oh, this is cool. But it doesn't. I mean, Dystopia is a cool song, and like there's a few others that are good on here, but it doesn't motivate a lot of excitement out of me. That's all.
I have Dystopia as a D. Dystopia is a good song. It's literally the exact same song as Hangar 18. The structure is exactly the same. 2 verses, 2 choruses, solos everywhere. It's the exact same song. Lying in State is brazen enough to literally steal the Holy Wars riff during its breakdown. So it's definitely peppered with stuff that's trying to harken back to the old days and try to like unleash the sleeper agents of Megadeth fans, be like, oh wait, they do sound like they used to. Yeah, because they're literally ripping off themselves. And it's a good thing that they do on those songs because the riffage is just not there. How many of the songs on this album are just open D chugs?
Justified obliteration, no one cares anymore. Filling out their blood was a promise they keep. Hate so strong divides them from a deep necrotic sleep.
Songwriting is not there. They're literally just open stringing it the whole time.
That's the thing. The thing that he's not trying to rewrite Rust in Peace over and over again. It's almost like trying to rewrite Sleepwalker and a couple of the songs on Endgame over and over and over again. Just keep churning that out. The people like that. Just keep making more of that. You see a record exec somewhere in the back line. There's a bit of assembly lineage feeling that you get from this. It's too like, okay, Megadeth song, like off the production line, and it's like, yeah, it's fast, it's better than a certain album, but
we've talked a lot about bad covers today. Foreign Policy, it needs to be mentioned. It's really not good.
I'm not a huge Fear fan. The original's not great. This version's so much worse. Like, Dave, have you not done enough to tarnish Lee Ving? You already ripped him off the MD45 project against his will to try and sell more copies. We will not be talking about that because that is legitimately not a Megadeth album. So we're not going to be talking about the Craving on this tier list. I think I have it in C or D. It's fine for what it is. But Dystopia is going to go in D tier. I do think it's better than 13. Not by much, but I do think it is. We've made a lot of references to Endgame, so now we will talk about Endgame. It is 2009. I'm showing it on camera. Dave looks so pissy on the back of this album cover. He's just holding up the guitar upside down with one hand like, I'm Dave. I'm angry. It's also trying to hide the fact his voice is shot. This is the first album where his vocals just drove directly off a cliff. United Abominations was the last album where he could actually sing. Dave sounds like trash on this album, through and through. The first vocals up here on This Day We Fight, and you can just tell. He's way too hot in the mix. Chris Broderick also makes his studio album debut on this one, at least with Megadeth. Obviously, he was with Nevermore for quite a while as a touring performer. This album has interesting songs on it. It's way too loud. I know that sounds like an old man. This is mixed way too loud. I don't know what they did. It's like they took the gain and just broke it off, turning it all the way to the right. I get that might have been the intent, but even when this came out, this is the album I have to listen to on the quietest volume, just because it's way too hot in the mix. The vocals are not there. There are some fun songs on there. I think the title track is pretty good. The hardest part of Letting Go is one of their better ballads, I have to say, and following it with Head Crusher is pretty fun. That was a pretty good first single selection. I think after Head Crusher, it kind of tapers off. How the story ends is whatever. The Right to Go Insane is kind of dumb. I have Endgame as a C. I used to be higher up on this one because, just graduated college. It was fast, it's brutal, it's heavy. Again, the production's really, really loud, and some of the songwriting is bad. 44 minutes has some of the worst vocals Dave has ever laid down a track ever. It's trying really hard to be like a Cryptic Writings or a Risk era track, but that was 10 years ago, Dave. Your voice isn't doing that anymore. So overall, I think it's fine, but I have Endgame as a C.
I think it says a lot about Endgame that to me that it opens up with a song called Dialectic Chaos. It's basically just like, hey, we have two guitarists now. I want to like this album so much more than I do. I think I said that about another album, but it's true here too. I like the back to thrash, like the aesthetic. I just wish the production were better. I wish the vocals were better. There's just not enough meat on the bones of memorable songs here to me. And it's certainly a consistent listening experience. It's an aggressive listening experience, but it's a C because it's just not something I can even pull much from.
Yeah, so I would put this one at B, but the thing is, me putting it at B makes me want to put some of those other B tier ones up into A, just to like kind of shift it and make it look, because it kind of doesn't stand with those as much. But this 13 put aside because that's more of a compilation. This is the first modern era Megadeth album, as far as like the era we're currently in for their sound. This is the first one. Because the first one, it's of the era where you talk about the production. For metal albums in general, that's now very much a consistent technique. Whereas, like, if you look at the track, like
the
in
waveforms,
the digital audio workstation, there's no peaks and valleys. It's very much a wash, and that's kind of done on purpose now. This is the first album where it's very apparent that that's what was going on. I think it works for this album's material. It being the first Megadeth album of this era of Megadeth, I think it's the best one because it doesn't feel tired yet. It felt like the most genuine. It was the most genuine return to their early sound since prior to Countdown to Extinction. It's like, if you want to talk about, okay, let's make a thrash album, like fast, heavy, like just pure metal album for the most part. This is like United Abominations teased it on Sleepwalker and a couple other tracks. This one delivered it. This Day We Fight and Head Crusher, obviously. And This Day We Fight and Head Crusher, I would actually defend Dave's tired vocals on this album. On this album, the gravelly sound he has kind of jives with the vibe of the album. So for that, I feel like instead of trying, like on Dystopia, trying to have like the old like way of being melodic and having his nasal vocals, he should have, from this album, he should have been like, you know what? Let me lean into the gravel. Let me lean into like my old man voice, because at least it'll be more genuine in that way. It'll be natural. I won't be straining, and I'll be like, we'll just make aggressive metal with like gravelly vocals that have only a tinge of melody to them, and we'll just be, like Testament. Testament doesn't make albums that sound like The Legacy and The New Order anymore. They make albums that sound like, and they don't quite go all the way to their death metal sound anymore that they did for one album, but there's a modern Testament, and they know how to lean into that. Dave should have taken the strongest elements from that and leaned into that. But instead, since this one, like he tries to do the nasal vocals but the gravel creeps in on him. This album is like the last one where I'm like, okay, that's a solid Megadeth album. I could recommend it to a metalhead. Be like, oh, go listen. Check out. These are my favorite ones, but also check out Endgame. Solid tracks on that one. I would argue a B, but if you put it at C, I won't be all appreciative.
I mean, the two C's and a B are going to end up putting it in C. Yep. I do think that, I like Risk more, but I'll put it right here. I think it's better than United Abominations. Overall, the track listing is better. So this is the first album with Chris Broderick, who is simultaneously the best and worst lead guitarist they've ever had, because technically he's got all the skills. Name one Chris Broderick lead. You can't do it. Nothing he's ever written for this band has been memorable.
He's extremely technically talented and it's flashy, but that doesn't translate the same way that Chris Poland or Marty Friedman's leads would have.
Right.
So
Like, I respect Chris Broderick a lot, but again, the stickiness is not there. It's like, congratulations, you went. I don't know where he went to school. Probably Berkeley. Is it Berkeley or Juilliard? It was probably Berkeley, being a West Coast guy. But it's just like, yeah, congratulations, you have all the technical prowess in the world. Doesn't mean you can write a hit song. Now we move on to another album we've referenced a lot, and that is Countdown to Extinction. Is this still their best-selling album? I think it might be. We're talking 1992.
it must be their best selling. I mean,
It made it to number 2
overall,
on Billboard,
probably-
right?
it is number 2 after Billy Ray Cyrus.
Hey,
and,
Make It Break Your Heart was indomitable. The youngins don't remember that, but that song was everywhere.
Yeah, and it went double platinum. Within a year or so of its release. So it was definitely, it's definitely their most like high selling album. Interesting time for like Megadeth and their peers, because this is obviously like the peak of like the grunge era, and like the narrative goes, oh, metal was destroyed by that. It's like, no, Megadeth and Metallica and Anthrax, in their own way, like they each, Metallica, obviously with the Black Album, they go diamond with the Black Album and beyond. Megadeth sells 2 million copies of this album and has probably gone on to sell more. And Sound of White Noise by Anthrax went platinum, I think. It at least went gold. I put this one A tier.
Okay.
It's not as good as Rust in Peace, so I put this one A, just because like I'm like so, and but obviously Skin of My Teeth, Symphony of Destruction, Foreclosure of a Dream. Like, there's just so much like great songwriting on this one. I don't like Sweating Bullets. I think I get he's kind of leaning into being silly, but it just takes me out of it.
If the war inside my head.
I think that A tier is looking awful empty, and I like it. I like putting it in A also. It's just a very consistent pop album. I think it starts to fade at the end. Neither Cyclotron nor Cat of Honor are very good.
Those are the two weakest. I love High Speed Dirt, though.
Yes, High Speed Dirt is fun. Ashes in Your Mouth is an epic closer that sort of brings it back a little bit with a little heavier edge to end the album. But yeah, it's just great songwriting, pop songwriting, great riffs. Just, it's all there. There's a reason it became popular. A tier.
I would agree. I was not quite as high on it as the two of you. I had it in B, primarily because Cyclotron and Captive Honor are pretty weak. Yes, there's cheesiness to Sweating Bullets, but the life? What do you mean life? I ain't got a life! Like, okay, let's calm it down a little bit. They had too much fun. They like, okay, people like Sweating Bullets when we were previewing for people. Let's make an entire song that's just that, except it's not because it's really bad. Title track is fine. Architecture of Aggression is interesting. It's a good title. The songwriting is there. You could definitely tell that they're trying to formulate a little more for radio, so I feel like I'm curious what this album would have sounded like if the Black Album had not come out prior. According to faithful source Wikipedia, Countdown to Extinction started recording on January 6th of 1992. So Black Album was definitely out by this point. I have it in B, but 2 A's and a B. That means we are going to have our first entry into the A tier, and Countdown to Extinction is certainly worthy of being there.
Oh, by the way,
Uh-oh.
It's not on the actual original release, but Crown of Worms, that's on the re-release.
It's so good!
Is an S tier Megadeth song.
Yes. It's fantastic.
Next up, we have 3 albums to go. We are moving on to 2004, and we have The System Has Failed. If you could make an argument for one of the albums on this list not being a Megadeth album, this one probably has the strongest case against it, being that it's, for all intents and purposes, a Dave Mustaine solo project, and that it was only a Megadeth album because he was tied to his record label. Let me look at this. He was on Sanctuary still at the time, so I think this was to primarily clear out the Sanctuary contract because they moved to Roadrunner right afterwards with United. So they got Chris Poland back to do the solo work, and they got some pretty great session musicians on bass and drums. And even though it's not truly, air quotes, a Megadeth album, I would be lying to you if I said otherwise. This is my favorite Megadeth album of all time. Of all 17, this is the one that I enjoy the most. Shut up, Drew. Shut up. I see you.
I knew you were going to say it, because like I know we've talked about this one to death. I know you
System.
love this one.
This is my one. This is my one that I would show. The songwriting is really good. The songs are all very different from each other. I think that even the instrumental, like Shadow of Death, Yeah, it's got the Lord is my shepherd. Like, okay, whatever, but it actually does something instrumentally interesting. Blackmail the Universe is just Sleepwalker, but with better riffs. Honestly, they're very similar songs. And then Die Dead Enough, which I think
the same song.
they are basically the same song. Die Dead Enough, I think, is the first Megadeth song I actually ever heard. I remember I was watching MTV2, and they had a video up there, and it was Megadeth, and I'm pretty sure it was Die Dead Enough. So I was like, this is awesome. Kick the Chair is like a top 3 Megadeth song for me. That one just kicks all sorts of ass. Tears in a Vial is a good change of pace. I Know Jack is you know, it's an interlude song, whatever. Then it just goes into Back in the Day, which is just ripping, and it's one of those retrospective type songs about like the LA scene at the time, and Something That I'm Not, which is, you know, Dave thinking he's a rapper making a Lars Ulrich diss track. Like, ooh, metal made you, buddy. Ooh, Don DeMarco. I think all the songs are good on it. The production's really good. The solos are interesting. It's nice to hear Chris Poland back, who's I think sounds way better on here than he does on those first 2 Megadeth albums. Because he has 20 more years of jazz pedigree behind him, so he does a lot more interesting things. This is an easy S for me. Like I said, it's my favorite of the bunch. I know that's not a very popular opinion, but I've always loved this album.
I think S is a little too high. I don't really have a really strong opinion on this one. I just S is too high.
Well, where would you put it?
B would probably be where I'd put it.
Okay. Or were you?
Oh no,
done?
I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Kev, what do you think about System?
Okay. I mean, when I ranked these to get ready for this, and this is my second favorite Megadeth album. To me, it's just the most consistent one. There really aren't any bad songs out here. I mean, even when you're getting deep in the album, like Truth Be Told just rips, and that's like track 9 of 12. Like, it's just a very consistent listen against all odds. Like, After the World Needs a Hero, like sometimes they managed to put together an album that's like exactly what the world needs a hero wanted to be. I also really like The Scorpion as a good popular track too. That one's been in my head all week since I listened to it. So yeah, it's my second favorite album, and for me that's puts it in S.
All right. Well, Drew's B is going to keep this an A, but it is a little bit higher than Countdown is for us. So it looks like it's going to go right here, the top of A tier. But no, System has failed.
I mean, it is kind of a testament to what Dave is able to do. Just like okay, I can do whatever I want. Everyone else just is purely session. I don't even have to consider them as bandmates.
Right.
And I think it was probably coming as an interesting time for him because of his hand.
Yes.
The surgery, surgery, or the I forget exactly what it was at the time. And it's funny. This is the first album where he had right after he had come out as like Born Again Christian too. This is like right after then too. So,
And
but it's like fresh at the time.
Yeah, and there are definitely a lot of there's quite a few songs on here that have religious imagery in the lyrics. You know, Truth Be Told is probably the biggest example of that, but it doesn't come off as hackneyed. It just sounds like it's different subject matter. This is the album I feel like Dave truly felt was going to be the last Megadeth album. So I feel like this is the one where he laid it out on the line. He has these riffs that he's had in his back pocket for however long, and I'm going to construct the best possible songs I could. And I don't feel that fire in anything that has come from him since.
Him being kind of the fact that Megadeth like actually did break up for a few years, and now he's kind of like he disappeared for a while. And there were a couple like odd compilations, like one with like The Grave That's Opened and all that. There's like the fact that he was probably in a mentality of okay, we're done. It probably psyched him into a different frame of mind for making this one as well. 2
albums left. And the randomizer put this one near the tail end of the list. Peace sells, but who's buying? 1986. The second album they ever had. The last one with Gar, the last one with Chris Poland, apart from The System Has Failed. Wake Up Dead, The Conjuring, Peace Sells, Devil's Island, Good Morning Black Friday, Bad Omen, an I Ain't Superstitious cover, and My Last Words. This is the album I have.
S-tier.
You're putting this in S? All right.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on that, or?
Yeah. I mean, this is the album where everything comes together. You have the really raw start with "Killing Is My Business." He has his statement of purpose to just play faster and heavier and more technical than Metallica. But this is the one where he delivers on the promise of what Megadeth would be. And the title track is like a little silly in retrospect, but at least it's silly in a way that feels really genuine. I mean, Wake Up Dead is like obviously so good. The fact that there's so few words in it, but it's so entertaining on its own as an instrument, like just the instrumental part alone is just speaks volumes about it. You can just sit back and just listen to how good that song is. The Conjuring, I love when, obviously, for obvious reasons with me, I love when Megadeth kind of goes dark and like leans into the occult a little bit, which they would have done back then. For that reason, The Conjuring is really cool. Again, The Conjuring is another one where it's mostly there's only certain parts where he's actually singing, and it's mostly instrumental, but it's so compelling on its own. Devil's Island has always been one of my favorite Megadeth songs, and super catchy but super heavy. I like the guitar, like the tapping at the beginning. It just pulls you in right away.
I think you can make an argument Peace Sells is the most well-known Megadeth song, specifically because it was used as the MTV News jingle.
Yes, there's definitely that. Bad Omen is like another like very like occult-oriented song, and it has that like again like the only stain on this album is like I Ain't Superstitious like cover. It's not terrible. It's just kind of silly, but it's similar to the Nancy Sinatra cover where it's like, okay, whatever. It's tongue in cheek. It's not them covering it and thinking that they're really cool. It's them being like, okay, we'll just throw this on there. Who cares? And so I can respect it a little bit more than the Anarchy in the UK cover. Dave's vocals are better here than they are on Rust. They aren't as nasally. They're more even, and so So I don't know if I would necessarily put this album above Rust in Peace, but I strongly believe it belongs in the S tier.
All right, Kev, follow that up.
Well, we go from my second favorite Megadeth album to my third, which means I'm right on that line between S and A. I mean, I think you said a lot of it. It takes the killing is my business blueprint, and it goes further. Like, you have the more complex stuff like Good Morning, Black Friday, which I also enjoy. You have the occult imagery, with the dark lyrics. You even have the pop side starting to show with Peace Sells, and it's just a very consistent listening experience, except for the random cover at the end, which at least isn't bad enough that it makes me want to turn the album off. So I would go high A, low S.
I had this in A. I Ain't Superstitious. It feels weird putting so much weight on one song, but when you only have 8 songs on the album, I feel like that's kind of a thing that's bound to happen. I do think I Ain't Superstitious is a weak cover because I also kind of forget about it. My Last Words drags on a little long at the end. I do feel like this album really peers off after Bad Omen. I don't like that Good Morning is track 5. I think it'd be a little bit better if it was earlier in the album. But like maybe switch Good Morning and Peace Sells. Honestly, have Peace Sells start the B-side of the vinyl. I think that'd be really rad. There are so many songs on here that are just classics of the band, so it's very hard to argue against it being any lower than A, which is where I had it. So that means if we take it and Kev puts it in S, that means this is in fact our second S tier album, which is where it ends up going. So our top 4 are looking pretty solid right now. And then we have a decent chunk in B and C. And we have one more album to talk about, and that is Super Collider. We're talking 2013. And they actually had a news story that came out yesterday. I shared this with Kev. I did not share this with Drew. How they've recently been able to, in the Hadron Collider, been able to synthesize lead into gold. They have changed the parameters where they can actually do that. Unfortunately, that is not going to change this album into gold whatsoever, because I'm just going to go ahead and put this in F. It's my second least favorite album of theirs.
It's my least favorite album of theirs. It is so bad. So in all my years of writing at Metal Injection, this is like the worst review I'd ever given. I gave it a 4 out of 10. It probably deserves even less, but I like out of just loyalty to Megadeth, I didn't put it lower than that. I'm looking at my review of it at the time.
I provided a line for this review at the end, I remember.
Yeah, you did. I think, where is it here?
While you look that up, I'll say, we've talked about points where albums drop off, and in this album, it actually drops off at track 2. Kingmaker's fine, but once Super Collider hits, game over, man. Game over.
Dude, Super Collider, the title track, it's like he's going beyond trying to sound poppy. It sounds like a Nissan commercial. like on the high road. I'll take it. It sounds like a Nissan commercial from 1996. And it's just it's so obviously trying to please rock radio, whatever's left of rock radio in 2013, please play my music. And it's just bad. I mean, yeah, the songs that I put here as like my favorite songs are Kingmaker, The Blackest Crow, and Don't Turn Your Back. Those are the three that I picked as like salvageable songs. Your line was Dave's voice is gone. Presumably he spent it yelling at clouds.
That sounds like something I would say, yeah. I will say, I mean, a lot of the ire of this album comes on the title track, Super Collider. And yes, it does sound like a Nissan commercial, but it's like afraid of what it actually is because the verses are just held power chords for whole notes. And then it gets to the end, it's like, bow, 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 bow. I was like, no, what are you doing? It's like Dave forgot he was in a metal band, and then he like had like an Alzheimer's relapse at the end of the verse. It's like, oh, I gotta go fast again real quick before we get to the chorus. I don't even think Super Collider is the worst track on the album. It's down there, but I think there's worse tracks on there, honestly. Maybe Kev can shed some light on that.
I was shocked by how bad some of this was. To me, Dance in the Rain is one of the worst ones. It has a combination somehow of like the ugly pop chorus that doesn't work, and then at the end, Dave decides, hey, let's add some thrash to this. And then that doesn't work either. Like, it feels like it's throwing a bunch of things at the wall to see what sticks. And that was not really what Megadeth needed in 2013, because it just feels like not much is sticking here. It's just a bunch of bad experiments.
This is the second and last album that they had Johnny K produce. And this album kind of answers why they had so many songs from 13 2 years before harken back to old material, because they didn't have the new material. They have the Cold Sweat cover. I do think it's one of their better covers. It's a Thin Lizzy cover. The original's so much better, though, because the guitar solo was actually doubled in parts, and it's more technical. It's like, oh, Chris Broderick finally found something he doesn't know how to play. Whoopsies. Burn is really bad. Burn Baby Burn Because It Feels So Good is one of the most trite things they've ever written lyrically. Built for War is also beyond stupid. It's like Dave finally remembered what mixed meter was and just throws in a 13/8 verse for no real reason. Meanwhile, he sounds like the old man encouraged the cowardly dog, screaming, "What do you think your fists are for?" I'm like, they're for grabbing things, Dave. Don't you know how biology works? I know you're a born-again Christian, but that doesn't mean you forgot all science. You used to be smart. What happened? Off the Edge is whatever, but a lot of it is just... Musically, I think with this album, because this was also the first one they dropped to D standard, and I think that the songs were all originally written for E standard. I think they were written for standard tuning, but then they realized, wait, Dave's voice is completely gone at this point. So they just tuned everything down, but the songs don't sound... They're in the correct tuning. I think that they just kind of pitch shifted everything down and re-recorded it in D standard without trying to take into effect how it sounds. Say what you will about Dystopia and The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. Those songs sound like they were meant for D standard tuning. These ones just sound like they were down-tuned out of necessity rather than an actual creative decision. And I think that really does hurt it for the worse. I also have this in F. I think this is a universal F for us as well, which was fine when we put it there. I think The World Needs a Hero was worse, but I'm pretty sure the two of you are going to outvote me on that one, and that Super Collider is worse, so I have no problem having Super Collider dead in the line.
So, if I could read a paragraph from my review.
Sure.
Perhaps the worst thing about Super Collider is how much of a tease it can be. Songs like Burn and Built for War all start out very promising, as if we're about to hear a solid, late-era Megadeth song like Headcrusher, Sleepwalker, or Sudden Death. But no, in almost every case, the music devolves into a bland soup of mid-tempo mega mush. I don't mind Megadeth going poppy. Cryptic Writings was awesome, but for God's sake, the title track sounds like a Nissan commercial. And yet again, with Burn, Dave tries to go the badass Danger Boy route like he did with Fastlane and Motorpsycho, songs you might remember for being two of the worst cringe-inducing Megadeth songs ever. Dave's voice really sounds shot here as well, as he barely bothers to do more than speak in his low voice throughout most of the record. And again, he's like talking through a lot of the record, which he always kind of did, but it worked more in the past. So yeah, this album was like, it was panned like almost universally for a very good reason. And at the time, I also dug into like the lyrics a lot more and how like just crappy a lot of them were. And look, I don't need to agree with that with everything that that an artist says, but do it artfully, do it in an interesting way. I kind of dug him a little bit on like for embracing young Earth creationism and stuff like that. I was a bit of a Reddit atheist back then still. So I don't
That's
necessarily
okay.
stand behind
Like 90%
Yeah.
of the people watching this video are Reddit atheists, so it's fine.
he comes close to like having an interesting thing to say in Dance in the Rain, but the verses are just so forced and awkward that it just botches all of it. This was a real low point for Megadeth. So
I understood why Chris and Sean left after this album. Among other reasons, but
yeah.
one of the reasons that Chris Broderick in particular cited is feeling creatively bankrupt. I'm like, and this is the album he got the most writing credits on.
It's funny, that year's Gigantor tour, 2013, was so bad. Like the lineup was Megadeth, Black Label Society, Device, Hell Yeah, Newstead,
Just Jason Newsted!
and Death Division. I was like, the lineups in the first year I went to Gigantor was in 2006. That was my first time seeing Megadeth. It was Megadeth, Opeth, Lamb of God. Who else? But just that alone was awesome. I think In Flames may have been on that one. I'm not sure, but yeah, that one was so. Let me look. Gigantor 2006. Well, I mean, the one I saw was with Opeth, and Lamb of God, and I saw it in Boston, and that was incredible. Then to see it and then the 2008 lineup that we saw at New England Metal and Hardcore was really great too, and then just to see it devolve into Device and Hell Yeah, it's like, come on.
Yeah, I saw the 2005 one, which had Anthrax and Dream Theater and Nevermore, So I mean, it started off so good, and then Hell Yeah instead.
So before we end the tier list, as we are wont to do on our tier lists, we have a little tradition here where each of us gets to move one of the entries either up one or down one. We're following the Jordan clause in that you cannot take anything out of S tier and knock it down to A. You cannot take anything out of F tier and bump it up to D. But any one album that you feel deserves to shift one location, you definitely can. You can opt to say that it's fine as is. You're in your prerogative to do that as well. As the special guest for this recording, Drew, I will let you go first. Is there an album that you are not too proud of regarding its placement that you would like to move?
Yeah, you know what I'm going to do. Killing Is My Business, put into A tier.
All right. I had a feeling. Kev, what would you like to do?
This is I kind of like how these are now.
Were you going to move Killing to A?
That was actually the one I was going to do, yeah.
It's the bell curve. It looks so pretty right now.
It does.
I'm looking myself. I'm perfectly okay with those two in S. I'm going to leave Risk in C. And the reason why I like it as the top of C because I do understand its faults, and I do understand that while I liked a lot of the choices it took, I understand why they didn't work. And I also wanted to say about Super Collider. Risk and Super Collider are often considered the two worst albums they've ever made, and obviously I think Risk is far, far better than Super Collider. Risk is them doing stuff outside of their comfort zone, and the reason why I think The World Needs a Hero is their worst. Super Collider is swings and misses and a whole lot of misses. The World Needs a Hero is them failing to do what used to come naturally. Super Collider is them just failing at different things. And I can at least appreciate them, even though they suck at it, trying to step outside their comfort zone in the same way that they did with Risk. But Risk was also 15 years before, and the plot is long gone at that point, which is why I think The World Needs a Hero is worse.
So it's like Super Collider is swing and miss, and World Needs a Hero, they're just trying to bunt everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good analogy. I like that. This is rare for me too. I'm going to leave this as it is. So this is our tier list of Megadeth albums. You will probably disagree with it because I know this does not look like a lot of the other ones that I've seen. If you're watching this, let us know in the comment section what you think about this list and how we arrange them and what your changes would be as well. I do want to give one more special shout out to Drew. Thank you again for coming on and talking metal with us. I know that off camera, Drew and I have talked about this kind of stuff for 20 years now I've known you. Well, thank you everybody for watching this tier list. Until next time, I believe the next one we're going to do in a couple months is games from Whose Line Is It Anyway? So feel free to keep an eye on that. I have some special guests from my college years coming from that as well. And until then, thanks for tuning in.